Hey y'all, I'm Teresa.
And Mark.
And we're your hosts for
Tell Me That Story,
where we tell you true stories of real life happenings.
So stick around, because you never know what you might hear.
Mark, I am so excited about this show that we have for the people today.
I am too. Been looking forward to it for a long time.
We have our first guest that's going to be on with us, and it's a friend of ours that, let's see, we've known him since about, I think, 2010. That's when I met him.
Yeah.
2010. So he's a chaplain. He is my life coach, our life coach. I always laugh about it because I say that he learned on me. He said he'd always be my life coach, and I said, yeah, that's because you learned on me.
Yeah, he's a certified John Maxwell life coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you say about him? Now, we're going to make his head swell really, really big right here, right now. So, but what do you always say?
Well, if you listen to our podcast, you've heard me reference Chuck, and I always refer to him as the wisest man I know.
His head's going to swell really big right now.
Well, yeah, I know it will, but
will it fit on the screen now?
It's well deserved.
It is. He is. You're so right, Mark. I totally agree with that. We've learned so much from him, and we just know that you'll enjoy hearing what he has to say too. So
y'all stick around. We'll be right back with Chuck Parish.
So we're so glad to have you with us tonight, Chuck. I already introduced him as Brother Chuck, Reverend Chuck. Told a little bit about, how that you have practiced your life coaching on me. I've laughed and said that's how you learned was life coaching on me.
Right.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be on Tell Me That Story. Man, I have blown through, and you keep waiting on the next episode. And what's amazing is some of these stories that y'all have shared, and I kept waiting. Is he going to tell it? Is he going to tell it? And we get the one about the hospital. We get the one about the ball of fire. And I was like, man, when's it coming? When's it coming? I remember the one about the angels. I'm like, he's not talking about the old Black Panther though. So, man, I'm loving it. I'm so proud of what y'all are doing. And now I'm a podcast fan. That's how I do a lot of my learning and study, just with the people that I subscribe to. But with y'all's, I mean, hey, it's matter of fact, there's a couple I've listened to more than once. Like on my lunch break, I go sit in the truck and I just play it again. One, I like the stories, but two, I just miss y'all and I like hearing your voice and seeing you. So, anyway, so there's that. But anyway, I'm glad to be here, man. And I look, here's I'll have to say this to your audience and the folks that are tuning in. This is what you get when you book Dr. Chuck, is that I am a speaker that comes with a disclaimer. You hear my strong Southern drawl? So if you smell cornbread cooking, that just means I'm talking. Nobody panic. Nobody run don't go break and run to the kitchen. See if you left the oven on. You smelling cornbread, it just means I'm talking. So I learned a long time ago. I have going through the Maxwell program and being one of his coaches, what I've done since 2016. I was actually in his mentorship program in 2015. I became certified on his team with John Maxwell in 2016. But we have speaking coaches that are in there and mentor program that I'm in and all that. And I have worked on, this. Now I've been speaking a long time. Don't misunderstand me. I'm used to being in front of people. Matter of fact, I love it. But I wanted to work on all these things. And my wife, Baby Cake, she would tell me, she'd say, you don't seem natural when you do that. And because I wasn't, I mean, it's like, this is what you get. So tell me that story. It's cornbread time. So here we go. What?
Right. We just old country rednecks telling stories. That's all it is.
and look.
All before hadn't Chuck.
Ma'am?
You've probably heard all of our stories before.
Oh yeah, I love them, man. I love them. I keep waiting. Like it's all good. I love it.
You know what I'm looking at? I'm looking at a guitar behind him. You see that?
Yep, I see that.
He's also a guitar player, y'all.
Yep. That was your dad's guitar, wasn't it?
That was one of his guitars right there. That Gibson, that's a 60, I think a 66 Gibson. And matter of fact, I was born in 68. And my dad, which he did back in the day, he did a lot of country music and early rock, back in the 60s, that kind of stuff. And he played with some notable folks. And it's not to name drop that kind of thing, but my heritage is from that, is growing up in a musical family. Matter of fact, my name Chuck is Chuck. It's not Charles. And a lot of people will address me as Charles, or they think, because Chuck is typically, here in the South, and I guess everywhere is a nickname for Charles. Chuck is. So the story is that when I was born, my mom, I was born back in the day when you bit the rope and you know what I'm saying. So right. I grew up hearing these stories, how mom tells you how long I was in labor with you, son. I just love you. And that's great. But the story is that she had to fill out the paperwork right there at bedside. So here I'm born. And they're doing the paperwork, and she keeps telling them, my name is Chuck Edward. I was named after my dad, my granddad, but first name Chuck. And they kept saying, you want Charles? No, it's Chuck. Well, the story of that is I'm actually named after Chuck Berry. And there was another Chuck that in the town that my parents grew up in that was well known in the community. So, they just named me Chuck. So I grew up in that kind of environment. But here's the thing. I have a younger brother that's 5 years younger than me. And I always ask them, who changed the radio dial? Because just hang on. I get and I'm very proud of my name. Don't misunderstand me. I love. Matter of fact, I did some Googling and checking it. I am the only Chuck Parish in America. You can Google and check all that, and it tells you how many thousands of Chucks there are and all that. But so there's only one of me. So I have to be the best version of me I can possibly be every day. I have no backup. There's no backup coming. But I always tell them, I say, I get Chuck Berry, and here my little brother comes along 5 years later. Somebody changed the radio dial because he gets Fabian Dion. If you remember, the Wanderer and all that, Fabian. I get Chuck. He gets Fabian Dion. So any way you introduce him, he's got a good stage name. So anyway, I grew up. Well, my dad when he when he got saved, and my mom at that time living and everything, just she was going to church, and he gave his heart to the Lord and did a whole turnaround and left a lot of big music names behind. And so I grew up carrying that guitar for him when I was old enough to carry it, to go set it up for him on stage. I can't tell you how many thousands of songs have been played on that guitar, and how many hundreds that he wrote in country gospel music. That was the instrument that he would have, and he would work out chords and all those things. I could pull it down off and show you the back of the neck if the camera would pick it up, where the back of the neck, the lacquer is worn off of it. Yeah. And you can actually see indentions on the neck of his style of playing, where his favorable, there's that Southern is kicking in. There you go. His favorite places to play, the frets are actually worn. There's grooves in the wood. Yeah. So when he passed away, I actually inherited that guitar. And of course, Fabian inherited, I think he got like his Fender Telecaster. He had some models like that he kept, and he had several. He played this one until he got a Gibson Lucille, the Lucille model, so he began playing it, and he kind of put this one away just because it was getting worn out. He brought it to the house one day, and he called me Chucko. He said, Chucko, he said, I brought my Gibson, and we had tracked down a Gibson certified luthier, whatever they call them, to refinish. They did all these, and so we went over there and took it to them, And he said, I'd like to have this guitar refinished. And so they check it all out. And he told him, he said, Mr. Parish, he said, we can make this guitar look like the day it rolled out of the Gibson factory right here in Nashville. It will look like the day that it come rolling out. And but there's something unique in the Gibson line that we learned in the lacquer. When you look at it real close, in the lacquer, it's called spider webbing. And the older the guitar gets, the more crackled it begins to look. His Lucille, when the older it got, it began to develop these little lines in the lacquer. And there was something called spider webbing. Now, I don't know if they've changed any of that now or not, but on these older models, that's what it would do. He told him, he said, I can make it look brand new, but the moment I do that, it goes down in value, because all of the marks on it, every scar, every indention, everything, it validates the authenticity of the instrument.
Ooh, I think that'll break.
Dad set it back in the case and he closed the lid. He said, let's go to the house. So it is just like, matter of fact, that guitar, he was the last one to play it. And a lot of people say, why don't you play it? I haven't gotten to the point yet where I can do that. There's something about opening up the guitar case, and I can still smell it. It just smells like his cologne, and he would sweat in the strap. Anyway, yeah, I don't want to get into all that, but there's some nostalgia there to it that I don't want to lose just yet.
I got you.
So there's something about learning the value of things we go through. There's something about when you hold on to that and knowing that's the authenticity of it. So here's something else. Before he passed away, this has been several years ago now. On Father's Day, my son had come down. Caleb had come down, and was going to visit with us, and we were going down Father's Day to spend that evening with Pop and Nana, and just hang out with them. And so we had gone to lunch, and that day we get back home, and my wife, Baby Cake, she just starts. She said she thought she had food poisoning. She said, I'm real nauseous. I will not be good company. And she said, you and Caleb go visit with Pop and Nana, and just y'all have a good time. I'm not up to it. So we rode down to where they lived and visited with them and hung out. We come back later that night. She's in the bed, and I go in and check on her, and something's not right. I'm trying to get her to go. Let's go get checked. And she said, no, I'm just food poisoning. And she's throwing up. She's doing all the stuff that goes with it. But then when I noticed she's very lethargic and something was going on, so we load her up and get her to the emergency room. And when I get her there, we get in, they get her, move her into the ER, and they call a team of folks in looking, and they're doing blood pressure. And all I can remember was, I think her bottom number was 40 on her blood pressure. They were talking, her heart rate was dropping. They come in, they check. They said her pupil. They said her eyes are setting. There was. They said her organs were starting to shut down. So they look at me and said, "Will you consent? We have to do emergency surgery and see what's going on." And so, sure, I consent to it. Like, let's do what we have to do. So, so they go through this process. And here's something, folks. I cannot explain this. I have no theological formula to throw out for you, other than here's what I've learned. A person with an experience trumps a person with a theory any day.
Absolutely.
And you can read scripture, you can quote scripture, you can know all the background of every character in the Bible, but if all it is theory that you've read, you have a head knowledge. And then there's an element that you have an experience. And on Tell Me the Story, I hear y'all say over and over, this was our experience. And you'll say, I don't care if you believe the story or not, this was our experience.
Right.
So I'm there. So here's what I experienced. When they say there's a peace that passes all understanding, there was zero panic.
Yeah.
I cannot explain. Now, that doesn't mean I was not concerned about my wife. Don't misunderstand me. I can't explain. They actually called the social worker in to take me off to a separate waiting room. And she kept saying, Mr. Parish, are you okay? Are you, and you're like, are you in denial? Like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I could not explain it. So they go do surgery and found out that she had some ruptured intestines and she was septic. Everything was shutting down. 21 days. She spends in ICU, portion of those weeks on life support. Matter of fact, when they came out and said they repaired what they could repair, and the doctor told me, the surgeon said, we're not even going to close her up because we don't know how long she's going to, we just, and that's all he said, we're just not going to close her up. So I go back into ICU and there she is, and there's machines breathing for her. There's all these things, and she's just packed and wrapped. And so we spent that time. There's a lot of detail that I'm hitting high spots. This is a whole nother story within itself. But we go through this process, and when she makes it through, oh, I love this part. I'm waiting out there in the waiting room, and people would come and check on us. Y'all would come over, just folks would just check but it gets midnight, it gets 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Everybody's gone home, and you're sitting in that waiting room, and it's quiet, and you're sitting there. And so I'm sitting there, and one of the nurses come out from the back, and they come over to me and said, Mr. Parish, would you mind if we put you a chair in the cubicle with her? Would you mind coming sitting back there? And I was like, what's happening? I mean, is this my last few minutes? What are you not telling me? And she just looked at me and she said, we've noticed that when you're in the room,
Woo.
now here's my other disclaimer. I made out a meet and hide, so just hang. They said, we noticed when you're in the room, her vitals go up.
Yep.
And I just kind of said, yeah, I've always had that effect on her. Let's go do this. Yeah, she couldn't respond. They said, on the monitors, when you're in the room, her vitals go up. So they fixed me a chair, and I went in there, and I'd whisper in her ear. And our family motto has always been, it won't be this way forever. No matter what we go through, even if it's a mountain, we will say it won't be this way forever. We will hit a storm. But if we're in that valley, it won't be this way forever. So that's I would whisper in her ear, I'd say, it won't be this way forever. So when she began to come through, and there's a whole process, she came through that. All right. So they get her to the step down ICU. We're moving through, and she's still not closed up. And there's one day she looks over at me, and it's the first time she ever made the statement as a question. That I'm laying on the little couch there in the room with her, and she looks through that bed rail, and she looks at me, and she says, it won't be this way forever.
The question.
That was hard.
Yeah.
And I said, no, it won't be this way forever. And so she began every day, she would push, and she would push, and she would push. Finally, they came in and said, well, we're going to close her up. So they come in, and I'm thinking, well, they're going to take her down. And no, I said, we're going to do it right here. I said, well, you're going to do it right here? And so they said, yeah. So they take a little bit of lidocaine and give her, and they start stapling. And she grabs my hand, and she grips. And her eyes got big. And of course, our sense of humor, the way we deal with things, we just say cornbread stuff. So I looked at the doc and I said, man, at least on Gunsmoke, they give you a stick to bite.
And a shot of whiskey.
I mean, come on, man. You could give her some, what's happening here? And the nurse, not knowing our sense of humor, she just looks at me and she goes, really? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm going to say. So anyway, like I said, there's all kinds of things in this story, but I'm going to get to my point. We get home, and she goes through home health, and all kinds of things are happening. And she's weeks and weeks and weeks of recovery. And there's one Sunday that we're getting ready for church. And I'm standing in my closet, and I'm looking for a tie. And, I like my ties to usually match my ink pens and things like that. Just little quirks like that I like. All right. So I'm over there looking. I'm not paying any attention. And she's standing at her dresser, and she's, standing there getting dressed. And she makes this statement. She said, I hate this scar. because they cut her. I mean, they opened her up from as far as they could get to just lay her open and work on her. And she's looking there and she said, I hate this scar. And I turned around and I looked at her. And you know what I thought of? That guitar right there.
Yeah.
And here's what I told her. I said, and there's folks that are going to be listening, and you've gone through things and you face things and you think, I can't shake this. This part of my past has done this amount of damage to me. But I looked at her and I said, baby cakes, I've never had surgery. I don't have any scars like that. I will not pretend to know how you feel. But I will ask you this. Never say that in my presence. You can hate that scar and you can despise it and you can complain about it, but never say it where I can hear it. Because of that scar, we get to cuddle every night. Because of that scar, we get to play with our grandbaby. Because of that scar, we get to go to church and walk on stage and you can sing and I can play music with you. Because of that scar, we get to go eat with our children. Because of that scar, that's the value of it to me.
Right.
So there's a value in scars that shows the authenticity of who we are. Of all this, and I left out a lot of detail in that story of what that scar represents. Now here's the real value of scars for those folks that are listening, that maybe you're not a person of faith and you're tuning in to hear what these stories are, and you think, well, I heard one about a Black Panther and I've heard one about angels singing, and now I'm hearing this weird thing. Like, how does this even fit into this stuff? See, here's the value of scars. That Scripture tells us. It says, in that day, one will stand before him, talking about Jesus, and they will ask him, what are those scars in your hands? You want to hear the value of a scar? His response is, those are the wounds I received in the house of my friends. He doesn't call them a bunch of dirty dogs, a bunch of no good. They did this, they did that. He says, these are the wounds I have in the house of my friends, and those scars are there. That's the value of a scar. So when we face things and we go through these things and you think that it makes you less valuable, it makes you feel like you can't measure up to what you need to do, there's a value to the authentic you that no one else can do. And that's the value of a scar. And I learned that lesson from that old Gibson hanging on that wall. Now, here's where the words will come back and haunt you. Back in, I think, November, within a 2-week period, I had 2 heart attacks. I was on nothing but vitamins. I've never been sick a day in my life. Didn't really realize what was happening then. I thought I had heartburn. But I had 2 heart attacks. Coming out of that, for weeks, I had to wear a life vest. It was a defibrillator. And they would say, if this thing starts alarming and your heart stops, it's going to shock you. And they told my wife, they said, if it goes off, don't touch him because it will knock you in the dirt too. So I'm sitting there. I had to wear it. I could take it off for 1 hour every day just to take a shower, get cleaned up. I had to sleep in it. It felt like a straitjacket. And I'm laying in bed one night. We're laying there. And I told her, I said, I hate this vest. I can't stand this vest. It feels like I'm sleeping in a straitjacket. And she just turned over to me and she said, hey, old boy, don't ever say that in my presence again. Because you're wearing that vest, you get to lay down with me.
That's right.
Exactly right.
The value of a scar will allow you to go through things that you didn't think were possible And you probably could not have handled it if you didn't have that scar to prove where you've come from.
That's right.
Now, I'll wrap up with this right here. I'm going to wrap up with this because I don't know where we're on our time. And if you need to edit any of this, you feel free to do it. But look, there's a story that says this old farmer had a son that was running wild in life. And he had an old fence post that there was nothing to. And every day he would go out and he would pray for his son. Every time he found out he had been in trouble with the law, he had done this, there was constant. He would go out and he would take a nail and he would drive it in that post, and he would pray the whole time. That was his. And they said that thing looked like a porcupine or a cactus through this boy's life. It was just his prayer post. And one day he gets saved, gives his heart to the Lord, and all that's cleaned away. And his dad goes out there, this old farmer, he goes out there and he takes a crowbar and he removes every nail that represented every wrong in his life. And one day when his son came over to visit, he said, "Son, come out here and look at my prayer post. I'm so proud of it. All the nails are gone." And his son looked at it and he said, "Yeah, but Dad, look at all those scars."
Yeah.
See, we can choose anything we want to do in life. We don't get to choose the consequence or the results on the other side.
Exactly.
But the value of those scars reminded him of where he came from.
Mm-hmm.
So thank y'all for letting me tell my story on Tell Me That Story. Is there anything else from me?
Well, Chuck,
That is so good. We're gonna have to have him back on.
we got to have you back on. It's been an honor to have you on tonight. I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much for coming on.
I knew that y'all would enjoy that, so I'm sure you probably had to grab some tissues. And the next time we have him on, we don't know, you liable to have to grab some tissues. Every single time I think that I ever talk to him, I end up having to have some tissues. So
Yeah.
great story, just a powerful man of God, wonderful life coach. So y'all look him up. We'll try to put a link there or just give you some information. You can look up Chuck Parish. I believe it says Chuck Parish on Facebook, and in parentheses it says
Smokehouse.
Yeah, that's a nickname. That's you know how us Southerners are.
Oh yeah.
Baby cakes and all that. No, but yeah, you can find me. Just go to parishleadership.com. That's my website. So,
Well, Chuck, it's been a pleasure, brother. We're about to run out of time. We're gonna wrap it up. Thank y'all for joining us tonight. Come back and see us next time on Tell Me That Story. God bless you.